on the show, we are going to talk about Gen Zs and the way they should be approaching the job market, and whether you are someone who is planning to take up a job abroad or you are someone who wants to work in India. But then what about the layoffs that are happening across these sectors, and what about the unpredictability in international economies, and how should you be approaching your work life if you are someone who wants a stable job or someone who wants to work in a gig manner. We have Suchitra Surve, Director, Growth Center, and Kushal, Lodha, Founder, Kgar.club. Welcome to the show, both of you, Suchitra and Kushal. Let me begin with Kushal over here, because Kushal, what kind of situation you think is for a new job entrant right now? You know, because the current scenario looks pretty gloomy with all the global uncertainty that we are seeing around, and almost layoffs happening across the preferred sectors that might be on the job list or the preference list of a Gen Z. How do you look at this situation? How do you assess?
I think this is a very serious situation which is happening all across the globe, not only in India but outside India as well, where a lot of companies are laying off their employees. My suggestion here is that focus on skills is something that is of paramount importance if you really want to stay where you're working right now. So, for example, focusing on upskilling themselves in various other skills which are required in a company, let's say artificial intelligence, machine learning, or skills, even basic skills like finance and all of that, that is something which is very important. So companies are recruiting and preferring those candidates which can add value in those organizations. And in fact, me coming from a chartered accountancy background, even I know that it's very difficult for CA freshers who are who are completing their qualification. They're also not able to get a job in this particular in this particular environment. So only suggestion for all of them is that focus on skills. That is something which is important. A lot of debate is happening around whether AI will replace jobs or not, and that is something which will also help a lot of people in order to stay. Like, for example, if you're using artificial intelligence and improving your productivity, you can definitely get a very good job and you can save that amount of time and be more productive and efficient. There are various tools in the field of finance specifically where you can just use those tools and analyze the financials of listed entities, investor presentations, and a lot of things. So using of these AI tools will help people to stay productive, stay more efficient. And I think this is something which is definitely going to play out if you want to be in your own company. And that is something which I would recommend everyone to upskill themselves in the field of AI, ML, and all of these things.
Suchitra, now hearing out Kushal, I want to know, how do you look at the situation? Because if we talk about layoffs, it's you know, in most of the sectors where the numbers are very high of layoffs, you know, it's mostly happening from middle to the top level of management, you know, where people are being laid off. Do you think the new job entrants really have something to worry?
I wouldn't say they have completely nothing to worry about, because typically when we look at the scenario and the layoffs that are happening, we are talking to certain specific industries. So it might be the IT industry, the fintech industry. That's where most of the people are mostly hit. And when you're talking about the budgets and the salaries, the pay cuts, and that's why you can see the layoffs happening in a certain area or the level or the middle management that we are talking about. When it comes to freshers, we need to understand that their concern will be when these guys who have been laid off are joining the industry, and they're making it tougher for the younger guys to join in. That is their real cause of concern. So one thing is there, individuals definitely need to be very, very sure, and they need to be focused in terms of how this layoff is going to affect me. At the same time, they also need to have a broader perspective as to what are my other options. If you're going to stick around to only some specific and confine yourself or limit yourself to certain roles, packages, brand names, then definitely you are in for trouble. That's my take on the entire layoff and how freshers should be looking at, penetrating this market. So there are various ways a freshers can think of entering this workforce without too much of tension, but being realistic at the same time. They cannot be unrealistic about their expectations and what they have to offer to the corporates whom they would probably join in.
All right, so we'll further analyze what should be your realistic expectation. But then in the meantime, Kushal, continuing from your previous answer, you said focus on skills. But Kushal, the thing over here is these are the kids who are just out of college or maybe, out of just universities. How can they upskill when the mindset is, of to be a part of a job or maybe a sector? This is the time when they want to start earning. Upskilling, you think, if they don't do it right now, could delay their entire trajectory of having a career of their choice, because these kind of these kind of events, especially talking about layoffs, this dampens the sentiments of someone who's just freshly getting into the sector.
Right. That's a very good point which you brought out, right? Like, for example, people go to their MBA colleges, or they're also going to these undergrad colleges as well in order to get a job. But if you talk about the average package or the average placement, an average placement package for an undergrad today in India is somewhere around rupees 4 to 5 lakhs. And MBA package, like if let's say a person is doing an MBA from the top tier institute, then the average package would just jump manifold, being around 30 to 35 lakhs per annum. But most of the people who are not able to get into an MBA have to realize that their package is going to be somewhere around rupees 4 to 5 lakhs if they are graduating from a tier 2 or tier 3 university. And even for CA specifically, after all the CAs are graduated, right, like their average package is around rupees 9 lakhs. And that is the average package which everyone is getting nowadays. So my point here is that people who are, let's say, graduating out of these universities and all, they should try to ensure that they are focusing on the skills that are not taught to them in the colleges or universities, and they are now like leveraging these skills in order to get a job. Let me explain with a very simple example. In the CA curriculum, right, you are not taught skills like, let's say, public speaking. You're not taught skills like financial modeling. You're not taught skills like very basic skills like how to, let's say, present a pitch deck or an information memorandum to your bosses or managers. Even if you're able to hone these skills, and if you're able to apply these skills in your day-to-day job, then chances of you being recruited are much higher as compared to someone who has the same academic qualification but does not have these skills which are required. So that's very important. And even all these undergrads, right? Like, for example, people who are doing their undergraduation, let's say BCom honors or BAF or let's say BMS, any other course from these universities, they are not taught these practical skills in their curriculums or colleges. So I think focusing on those particular skills will definitely help them get a job. And there are like a bunch of companies which are now coming into the upskilling platform that will help them get a job. And there are companies which are coming up with pay if you are placed. Like, for example, there are various companies which will help you get a job, and you have to pay this company only if you get a placement. So like there are various startups which are coming up in this field, and I suggest that getting a job has become like such a huge priority of all these individuals that they have to pay some amount of money to these upskilling platforms and then finally get a job. So that is something which is happening, because ideally it's not possible for these colleges also to place all the candidates. For example, SRCC today has 900 odd candidates, right? Even any other tier 2, tier 3 university will have thousands of graduates every year. It's not ideally possible for them to place each and everyone in a very lucrative role. So that is something which I would recommend everyone to focus on.
Right, exactly. So, one needs to be really prepared with all kind of homework done, and this also includes, having yourself equipped with the right kind of skill sets. But then having said that, Suchitra, one point in concern over here is this also, that, a lot of Gen Z or a lot of young people who are just coming out of college or universities, they really don't have like a career mindset, also because of the gig economy that we've been talking about. They really don't want to get tied up to one particular organization or one particular sector. Yes, they want to have all the relevant skill sets, but at the same time, they want to have their own way of working, and they want to follow a very unconventional style of working which was not there earlier, which can also result to not having the right kind of payment environment that you might want to have at the just beginning of your career. So having this kind of a mindset, is it really good? What could be the side effects in the longer run? Because you are talking about just starting that journey, okay, and you have a very long way to go. So should one be opting for a much a safer net just because you're starting out, or if you are confident about your skill sets, you can just get into it and just experiment?
I think I'll answer this in two parts. First is, you very rightly said that if you're confident about your skill sets, definitely you can start off very early, very immediately. But then freshers should know that having skills is not enough. You need to back it up with experience as well. You need to have a very good understanding of what markets is, and also now you need to be a little more resilient when you're trying to navigate your entire career, or when you are a newbie in this entire settled or established place, you need to be very resilient and you should be very sure about the skills that you have. That is the first part. Second part, you very rightly said that, nowadays students want everything in a less work, more salary, easy ways out, fun, challenge, everything. But they don't realize that is not what entire corporate life or career is going to be. So that's why, as I said earlier, they need to be a little realistic. I think what they lack is a little bit of touch with the reality and lack of homework, lack of good research. They are trying to believe what they want to believe in and what they are seeing on social media or what has been portrayed to them in terms of the world of work. So, graduates or freshers should be aware that the kind of work that they are expecting may not happen in reality. And most importantly, most of the kids today we meet, they say, I want to follow my passion. I want to do what I want to do, what I love to do. But very few are very clear on what they really want to do, along with the fact that they're good at it as well. A lot of them may love to do a lot of things, but they may not have the abilities to do it. When a lot of students come to a center, this is where we find the gap existing, and that's why the entire direction later on starts creating an issue for the students. And for freshers, I think a little bit of self assessment, introspection in terms of their passion, in terms of their abilities or career goals is very, very important to set the foot right at the first go. And one more thing, there is always room for experimentation, there's always room for improvement. So it's okay to fail, it's okay to face a little setback in the initial years of your career, because that's how you learn more about yourself, opportunities, and what you can or cannot do. So a little ease and a little patience would go a long way in making the freshers establish their careers very well. That's what I feel.
That is a very important aspect that you highlighted. But also, Kushal, now one thing is clear that, talking about skill set, you really need to ensure that you have all of it. But in case, if you are someone who just have a job interview in hand now, what are the tips that you would want to give to our viewers, how to negotiate? And for example, there has been a layoff in the organization where you're just going for an interview. What are the things that you should keep in mind, in terms of questions that you might want to ask the organization since they have gone through a phase of layoff?
Right. So I think again, this is a very relevant question as far as the current situation is concerned, especially given the fact that a lot of companies are also requesting their employees to either work from home, work from office, depending on their availability and all. If you are, let's say, having an interview in the future, and if you are asked about negotiation and all of that, I think the best way to tackle these questions is by telling how capable you are and what kind of value will you add to the organization. I think the person who is able to communicate very properly, articulate their thoughts very effectively, and has a clarity that, okay, they are going to add value in this particular manner, then this person can negotiate in a much better manner as compared to other candidates. So preparing for these interviews is one thing where you need to leverage your own expertise, your own technical skills, as well as academic skills. And once you are once you're cracking these interviews, once you are giving these interviews, right, you also have to ensure that you are like having a good knowledge about the industry standards and packages that are being offered to your peers or your competitors, whoever it is. So that is something which you should always have it in your mind. And as far as interview preparation is concerned, right, again, like there are a bunch of AI tools which are now being prepared, which can just help you free of cost to prepare for these interviews as well. Like if let's say you talk about LinkedIn Learning, right? LinkedIn is such a powerful tool and all, and it's such a powerful tool and it's such a powerful mechanism in order to prepare you for job interviews. Where if you just click on the job section and there's a section of practice interview and get feedback, you'll be given a list of 30 different questions with the relevant answers which you should answer in your job interviews as well. So there are a lot of these free tools. I just mentioned one of them. But if you just Google and if you just research a lot, you'll just have a lot of free tools in order to prepare for your interviews. And as far as negotiation is concerned, I think you have to focus more on how can you add more value to that organization rather than just telling about how much salary you are expecting or maybe what kind of value they are expecting from you. So that is something which I recommend everyone nowadays, especially when their job interviews are concerned.
So, Chitra, now if someone wants to apply for a job in the international market, how do you think one should be preparing for that? And what are the kind of sectors that you think one can look at? What should be your package expectation, considering the environment is so gloomy and so unpredictable? Should you be the one compromising on your expectation, or just because, or that's not needed because you're entering the job market and you have the desired skill sets, you have the desired degree, so one should just opt for it. What do you think?
I think the first question that one needs to identify and answer is, why do I want to go abroad? I mean, what is my main motive behind going abroad and working? Is it the pay package? Is it the change of scenario? Is it the profile? Or is it just the country that I want to be in? So that's the first answer they need to find. Once that is done, they need to ensure that they are aware of the visa formalities, the kind of residency or laws, or the kind of contracts that they will be getting in, because with each country there is a different requirement for different skill sets, in terms of freshers, in terms of somebody who is experienced. So I think that will be the second research that they will have to understand in terms of the immigration policies as well, because one needs to fit the bill in terms of the age, the profile, education, all the entire the works, I would say, when it comes to settling abroad, as well as in terms of whether to compromise on salary package or no. I think it'll be based on an individual's self-worth in terms of they'll have to do a little bit of soul searching in terms of, if I stay back, this is the kind of package I'm going to get, these are the areas I'm ready to compromise on. Or if I go abroad, probably my salary would increase 10x, but these are the other areas that I will be adjusting on. So it'll become a very personal decision for somebody to make this decision finally, whether I want to go abroad or no. As I mentioned to you earlier, we need to find out what is the motive. Is it, if it's money, and if they are skilled, if they have the kind of experience, if they have the kind of new edge technologies as well, and they can add value to the organization, believe me, people will offer you. It's not that they have to compromise at all. I think proving your self-worth, your skills, and what you can add value to the organization is more important than thinking on how much I should compromise. If I think the focus should be the other way, that I'm fantastic, I can add this value to your organization, and that's why I'm looking at such kind of a pay. But with a pinch of salt, that is being realistic as to what are your other options back home or abroad. That's one thing I think an individual should start thinking.
All right, last question and then we wrap up this discussion. Okay, so Kushal, what if someone is actually looking for a job abroad? The same question to you in terms of homework, in terms of preparation. What are the quick tips that you would want to give?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're looking for a job abroad, right, like the preparation would be much different because the environment is completely different over there. For example, if I'm looking for a job in the consulting domain in the United States, I need to understand about the macroeconomic indicators of the United States, and I need to ensure that how is the job market over there and what kind of companies are using these consultancy services in the United States of America. Like, in fact, I was talking to my friend who's a consultant himself, and he was telling me that the Indian consulting firms are making more money and they are able to perform better as compared to the US consulting firms recently because of the hike in the rates which are being charged by these consultants, especially after the post-pandemic world. And in fact, if let's say I am applying for a job abroad, I need to know that, okay, what kind of firms are like recruiting Indian candidates, what kind of services will be required over there, what kind of learning will I get if I go, let's say, in UK or US or Singapore or any other country in the world. And lastly, like what kind of compensation and package am I going to get? Everyone knows that in USA, like you are compensated fairly well and fairly above as compared to what you will get in an Indian entity. But you also need to realize and you need to understand that you have to settle in a completely new world, in a completely new environment. So preparing for those job interviews will like involve a lot of preparation in terms of what kind of macroeconomic indicators are there. Apart from that, how are the relations of that country with the Indian economy, whether like Indian students are like allowed to work there, and if yes, like for how many years and all, depending on the visa requirements. And lastly, I think if you're relocating to a completely new country, right, you also need to understand about the fact that the compensation would be higher, but you also need to take into consideration the cost of living as well as the standard of living. So that is something which is very critical. And once you prepare for these job interviews, I think you can also get into foreign jobs, and you can get like good placement packages there, because like courses like, let's say, CFA, ACCA, CFP, CPA, These are various finance courses, which like out of which I have also done a couple of them. These are globally recognized. So with these qualifications and certifications, anyone can get a job in more than 160 plus countries just basis this particular certification. So if you are having these certifications, you can literally apply to like companies which are in Singapore, France, US, UK, etc. And then if that interview is scheduled, the way you need to prepare is just by understanding that company's background, what are their services offered, how can you add value to that company, and lastly, what do you expect in terms of learning and grooming your own personality. Like having your own growth is equally important as compared to what kind of package or what kind of services you're going to offer in that company.
All right, so that's a handy plan for all the Gen Zs out there who are planning to get into the job market, maybe going for their first interview or just out of college and now will start looking for jobs. Thank you so much, Suchitra and Kushal, for being on the show and helping our viewers with that. We'll take a quick break, but then post that we have more on your personal finance after this break. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show with me, Kavita Thapliyal. So in today's day and age, it is important that you do not make your kids financially dependent on you. You should inculcate the importance of financial independence from an early age. So let's welcome on board Mrin Agrawal, founder, director of FinSafe, and take the discussion forward. Mrin, good evening and welcome to the show. Although it's perfectly fine for parents to think that, they want to plan the financial future for their kids. But then a lot of time, what happens due to this kind of mindset is that your kids tend to depend on their parents for all the kind of financial support, even when they are working, when they are earning, where they can be financially independent. The lesson that parents could understand from this kind of habit is that you need to really inculcate the right kind of financial habits from childhood, which is a lot about your upbringing, the way you raise your kids. How do you take a step ahead in this direction? For example, if someone has kids, like you yourself also, you mentioned last time on the show that you have 2 teens. So how do you ensure that in the long run, your kids do not become financially dependent on you?
So good evening, Kavita, and it's lovely to be here today. Well, I think a lot of this, honestly happens through 2 ways. One is through our actions, and second is talking about it. Unfortunately, I think both of these things we are not doing these days as parents. So if you see, typically one doesn't really talk about money matters at home. And whatever the financial difficulties the parents are going through, they will still ensure that they are paying for the child's education, but apart from that they're also paying for all sorts of expensive courses and tuition and stuff like that. And parents are also taking loans or mortgaging their property to ensure that children get the best quality of education, and rightly so. But the point being that somewhere I think these conversations should also include the children, because the children need to be aware as well of the difficulties that the parents are going through, and in order to also value the amounts that are being spent. I do see sometimes that that children take it for granted that we will go to, let's say, abroad, or let's say an expensive education, right? So I think this is really important. The second thing is also in terms of when children are small, right? So obviously you can't talk to them about money matters at that point, but you constantly need to show through your actions about the value of money. And a good start would be to say no for a couple of things, because again, we do tend to give in to the demands of small children and buy them whatever they want. But I think at every phase of the child's life, we need to tell them no for certain things, or very openly say that this is not really worth it and stuff like that. And maybe like if you're going shopping for clothes, right, it's important to tell them to look at the price tags and see what is the cost of the item that they are buying, so that they don't just think that there's one ATM out there.
Okay, I think there's some technical glitch out there and we will be back with Mrin. Okay, so I think we've got her back. Mrin, you can continue if you can hear me. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I think we need to show through our actions. And another very important aspect that's there right now is really peer pressure, right? And so there's peer pressure in all aspects, right from when the child is a toddler, to send the child to expensive play school, and then followed by an expensive international school, and then followed by further expensive higher education. So there's a lot of peer pressure, not only in lifestyle, but also in these sort of matters as well. And then it's about the sort of co-curricular classes that you're putting the child through as well. So somewhere, I think both parents and children are falling a lot to this peer pressure. And this is another reason,
stages, at least in the initial stages of the childhood, I think it's the parents' aspiration where you really need to put a full stop and just practically think about what you are doing with your money, and also what kind of habits or what kind of money habits, are you teaching your kids. But then having said that, do you think, a very nice way to help your kids understand money, or the concept of investment, or even expenses, is to have them started working at an early age? In India, we know a lot of parents don't prefer that. We really put more trust on the kids getting the right kind of education, and a lot of parents now want their kids to go abroad and study, where if their work is fine. Okay, I mean, for some reason parents living over here would find it very cool if their kids are studying as well as doing a part-time job. Okay, they are making money or they're earning in dollars. That's how they will put it out over here. But then working over here and studying is only when you are into a financial crisis and you want to support your family. जल्दी उम्र से काम करना शुरू कर दिया, छोटी उम्र से काम करना शुरू कर दिया, is what they say. So do you think this can be a part of your money lesson to your kid?
Oh, absolutely. And, there are websites where, for example, teenagers, like kids who are in high school, can look for internships. Of course, they're not going to be like highly paying, but I think this is a very, very good way to build responsibility. So, you can teach children, for example, underprivileged children. There are many such opportunities that are actually available for high school kids. And I think it's a really good thing when at least you're in 10th standard and above, to basically look at, focusing some time on these aspects of life as well. And the earnings that you have, again, it's a great way, because when the child starts earning and, you then tell them to spend some of their money and then talk about investing, I think that's a great way to initiate them into this whole process of money management.
All right, last question to you, and then we wrap up this discussion, Mrin, where now having said that, parents a lot of time invest on behalf of their kids, okay? How do you teach your kids, or how do you tell them that this is how we are planning your education? Because come on, you've got to be as transparent as you can with your kids. You need to tell them what goes and how much goes into getting their education done, or the kind of expenses the kids demand. So teaching them to invest, can they do it, by the way, by informing them as to what investment is going on for their future? How can one do this?
I think they can talk to them and impress about the costs associated, and the whole aspect of inflation. And I think that's a very good start for them to then understand about inflation and how costs basically go up. And briefly talk about maybe some of the investments that they have done. But yes, I think a good way to start would be a comparison of costs itself, and the whole aspect of how much these costs are going to grow over a period of time.
I think that will be all for the topic today. Thank you so much for helping our viewers plan better money habits for their kids. Thank you so much for being on the show. All right, we move on into tonight's episode of ITFC First Presents Leaders of Tomorrow. We put the spotlight on India's dynamic retail landscape. In the first segment, we are in conversation with Anand Ramanathan of Deloitte India, who sheds light on the growth trajectory of quick commerce and the luxury segment of the country. In the second segment, we discuss the change in consumer behavior and the role of technology with Rakesh Malhotra, founder Live Pure. Listen in. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show with me, Kavita Thapliyal, and let's now discuss the importance of insurance for senior citizens. And we have on board Harshvardhan Rungta, CFP Rungta Securities Private Limited. Harsh, good evening and welcome to the show. Very important discussion. Senior citizens, especially those who have not taken an insurance policy, a health insurance policy up till now, how is the road ahead going to be for them? How difficult or how easy?
Well, Kavita, it's a very sensitive topic because, as you grow older, the need for health insurance becomes more because of because of aging related ailments and otherwise complications. And so if we talk about senior citizens, so technically the term senior citizen covers people who are 60 years and above. So from an insurance standpoint, if all those people who are below 65 years of age, I would recommend that they go in for a regular health insurance policy, just like any other younger individual will go in for. Because most of the companies do accept a fresh proposal, a fresh application until a person touches 65 years of age. So for all those who are above 60, of course, yes, you can cover, but try and cover yourself under the regular medical policies. And if you're 65 years and above, then it's where exactly the senior citizen policies come into picture. Now, what needs to be kept in mind is that, the scope of coverage, the difference between a standard regular medical policy and the senior citizen policy. There would be, of course, the scope of coverages. There would be co-payment, the co-pay conditions that are going to be levied, and the premium costs are going to be different than what it is on a regular medical policy. So, if I may just put into a simple context, I mean, there would be a co-pay in most of the insurance policies that you see for senior citizens, the copay would range from 10% to 20%, and in some cases it also goes up to about 30 to 50%. There would be sub-limits in the policy, so certain treatments will be restricted to say that the treatment for XYZ thing would be paid only up to X amount, and so cataract, for example, is paid only up till 40,000 rupees in some policies, and irrespective of your cost. So what does this copay essentially mean? That is very important to understand because it's an important feature affecting the claims that you will get. So say, for example, you take a 10 lakh cover for yourself, which has a 20% copay. Condition is 20% copay. What does it mean? In case of any hospitalization where your actual expenses are, say, 5 lakhs. So you have a cover for 10 lakhs and your actual expenses, the total hospital expenses were 5 lakh of rupees. It's well within your sum insured. However, there is a 20% copay condition, which means in this particular case, when the hospital bill was 5 lakhs, 20% of that is 1 lakh of rupees, is what the insured will have to bear himself. And the balance 4 lakhs will be paid by the insurance company, despite the fact that the claim was within the total sum insured of 10 lakhs. So that's the meaning of copay. In some cases, as I said, it goes up to even probably 30 to 50%. So you will have to be very careful in looking at what the features of the policy are and how we go about covering it for yourself.
So Harsh, although copay is a brilliant idea that one can go for, but then what about the premium amount? Does it reduces if you are opting for a copay option?
No, so in fact, Kavita, in most of the senior citizen policies, copay is an inbuilt feature. So it's not that you have to opt for it. In fact, if you don't want a copay facility, then the premium goes up. So in this case, copay is an inbuilt feature in most of the senior citizen policies. That is the reason I was highlighting, if possible, and if you're below 65 years of age, try and go in for a regular medical policy, which is offered to all individuals, even the younger ones who are 18 years or 30 years of old. So age of entry in most of the policies will be 65. Post 65 is what a senior citizen policy will need to be taken, in which copay is more or less mandatory in almost all the policies.
So Harsh, if someone has a health condition, and so the copay option will still cover it, right? I mean, if it is a condition that can be covered, maybe after a certain waiting period or whatever it is, the copay option will still offer them the coverage.
Yes. So what happens in case a person already is diagnosed with an ailment? So let's consider that situation. So if a person is already having some pre-existing diseases, so PED, that's what it's called. If there is a pre-existing condition, the coverage on that pre-existing condition will start after a waiting period of, say, 1 year to 4 years. So some policies will cover pre-existing ailments from after 1 year. Some will cover after 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, as the policy condition may be. Once it starts getting covered after the waiting period, the copay will still apply. So say, for example, a person is suffering from a diabetes. If there is a waiting period of, say, 3 years, So until 3 years, all the ailments, all the treatment related to diabetes and complications thereof. Now that's a tricky one when you talk about complications thereof. We will not go into that direction right now. But if all the treatment related to diabetes will not be paid until 3 years, post 3 years, if once the claim comes, it will be covered with a copay, which is 20% or whatever percentage the policy says.
All right. So these are most of the aspects that we've covered for a policy if one wants to opt for when a senior citizen. But then also a few names, if you could recommend where senior citizens can actually go and apply for health insurance company, or almost all general insurance companies offer plans for senior citizens.
No, there are many companies that offer. Not all companies will offer, but there are many companies in the market which offer policies for senior citizens. So ideally, what I would recommend is that you need to go and search specifically, because each policy has different features covering different things. So some policies, for example, will cover pre-existing diseases after 1 year, but the copay amount will be higher. So you might want to look at another policy which has a pre-existing ailment coverage starting 3 years, but the copay amount is lower to 20%. Then there is further down, when you go into the details, you will see that there are slight differences between what is covered, what is not covered. So I think ideally for senior citizens, you need to very specifically go into the features of coverages of different companies and then buy something that is more suitable to you. However, in a broad, generic manner, if we need to still look at something, I personally like the Bajaj Allianz Silver Health and Aditya Birla Active Care. So these are the two policies which I found reasonably in between, putting things in between the two extremes of very restrictive to very liberal. However, as I still suggest, you need to go into the specifics of the policy and try and get something that is more suited to a health condition of the senior citizen presently.
All right, Harsh, that will be all for the senior citizens that we have. And okay, I think we just have time left for one question. That is from Sharad Verma. He can invest in HDFC Flexi Cap fund for 4 to 5 years. Do you recommend that fund to him, Harsh?
Yeah, so Kavita, I'll break this into two parts. The first part being, is HDFC Flexi Cap a good scheme? Yes, it is a good scheme which you can invest into for an equity allocation. The question which is bigger is, for a period of 4 to 5 years, should you invest into an HDFC Flexi Cap kind of a fund, which is an equity scheme. So we normally suggest an equity allocation for the minimum time period of 8 to 10 years, because that if you stay invested for that long, the historical data says that the chances of incurring losses are very, very negligible if you go on holding the investment for 8 to 10 years. His investment horizon is 4 to 5 years. So yes, the scheme is good. What he could do is invest in the scheme via SIP rather than lump.
All right, I think that will be all. Thank you so much, Harsh, for being on the show today, helping our viewers with their financial portfolio queries. And time to say goodbye to you as well. But then before I end the show, something very important about your ITR filing. Now, July end means it's a tax filing season, and we are not very far away from it. While most people file taxes based on their income bracket, what do you do if your income falls in the list of exempted incomes? Even if this is the case, experts recommend filing a nil ITR. Snehisha explains why.
July end means it's tax filing season, and we are not very far away from it. While most people file taxes based on their income bracket, what do you do if your income falls in the list of exempted incomes? If your gross total income during the financial year was less than the basic exemption limit, it is not mandatory for you to file the tax return. Under the old tax regime, the basic exemption is 2.5 lakh rupees for up to 60 years, 3 lakh for senior citizens, and rupees 5 lakh for very senior citizens. Under the new tax regime, it is a uniform 2.5 lakh rupees for all taxpayers. Even if your income is below the tax bracket, it is a good practice to file a nil ITR. Now, a nil return is a tax return where there is no tax liability on the taxpayer. Tax experts say that even if it is not mandatory for you to file your ITR, it is a good idea to do it anyway. Let's see a list of reasons why it would be a good idea to do so. First, a record of income. The ITR serves as a proof of income and comes in handy when you're seeking a scholarship, getting your passport made, or applying for an international visa. It also helps in getting a loan as it indicates regularity. Second one is continuity of filing. Now, if you are on a sabbatical or you have gone abroad for higher studies, income may decline from previous years. Filing a nil return helps in maintaining continuity of tax records even in case of no income. The third one is explains cash gifts. Filing a nil return is especially useful if one has received a significant amount as gifts during the year. In case of a scrutiny by the tax department, the nil return will clear the air and act as proof of a genuine gift received. Last but not the least, claim refund or carry forward loss. Now, nil returns can help you claim refund of TDS or TCS, or if you want to carry forward losses. The TDS or TCS will come back only if the nil refund is filed. Losses too can be carried forward only by filing the nil returns. So these are all the reasons why it's a good idea to file a nil income tax return, even if you fall under the income tax bracket.